thank you very much for helping to entertain as we were a little bit delayed in the in-camera meeting. We appreciate that. And also it's a good signal for us to get moving and get out, so appreciate that. So I will call the meeting to order and looking to see if there's any declarations of interest. I see none. I'd like to be able to do our land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please stand with us while R.S. McLaughlin leads us in O Canada. I'd like to be able to ask Trustee Ashley Noble to introduce the R.S. McLaughlin Band.
It is my privilege today to introduce my alma mater, R.S. McLaughlin, CVI, who has their jazz band here today, led by director Curtis Hunter. Today they'll be playing two pieces, Humanism by Jonathan Batiste and Think by Aretha Franklin. Good luck, Trojans.
So we started with Humanism, so now we're going to play Blame It on the Blues.
Trustees, while we're just waiting for the last of the items to be cleared, want to be able to look for a motion to be able to adopt the agenda, knowing that we have one item to add under new business from student trustee Tyler West with regards to e-learning, which I believe that he has passed out a document that you'll find on your table. So seeing that, if we could get a motion to approve the amended agenda. Trustee Edwards, Trustee Forbes, all in favor? That's carried. We have three sets of minutes there from September the 16th, October the 7th, and October the 21st. Looking for a motion to be able to approve those minutes, or if there's any errors or omissions. Ashley Noble to approve. Seconder. Trustee Barnes. All those in favor? Those are carried. Before we move on to This Is My Story, and to be able to introduce that, I would like to introduce somebody who is starting their story here at DDSB today, and that's Nora Marsh. She joins us as the Associate Director, and certainly on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and certainly I know of staff, we certainly welcome you tonight and look forward to your contribution, your leadership, and your success here at the board, the Durham District School Board. So welcome. We have a very special This Is My Story tonight, because tonight's edition of This Is My Story features our very own Superintendent, Margaret Lazarus. Tonight, Margaret shares her journey, her personal story of challenges and lived realities of facing prejudice and racism. Margaret's story is one of resilience, perseverance, and success. And Margaret's story will not only move you, but will also show you how her incredible journey has impacted the lives of students, staff, families, and trustees. This is my story.
Growing up in England was not easy because the racism in England was very, very explicit. And so in school it was very difficult because the teachers were mean to us. It was not uncommon for teachers to say to us, go back to where you came from, and we would just have to sit and take that. So I was born in Huddersfield, between Leeds and Manchester in West Yorkshire. My parents had emigrated to England in the mid-50s from Grenada. My parents are from Grenada. So for us, going to school was very, very difficult. And the kids at school, they created rhymes about us. And as kids, we would just listen, and there was nothing we could do because that's just the way things were. And so kids would call us Sambos, or they would call us gollywogs. And I know in my classes, our teachers were not used to immigrant children. They were not ready to teach a curriculum that was diverse. As children, immigrant children in England, we really needed somebody to advocate for us. And so I was fortunate to have a mother and a father who advocated for us. So all the negative things that I would get at school from our teachers, from the kids, I would go home and I would talk to my mom. And I said, Mom, guess what the teacher said to me today? The teacher said to me, go back to where you came from. And she said, my child, you're born here, don't worry about her. Or I would come home and I'd say, Mummy, the teacher said you'll never amount to anything in your life. And she would say, my child, don't worry about that. You will be successful. You will go to university. So those thoughts were always going through my mind, and it's really what got me through those dark days of my childhood. However, there were two pivotal experiences that I had as a child that were life-changing for me. I was about 10, 11, it's hard to remember, and I was playing with some friends, and we were skipping. It had rained, and there was mud on the ground, and I was skipping and landed in some mud. And the mud splashed up and hit this girl. She had mud on her leg, and she was so angry. And she said to me, lick it up, you Sambo. And I was so upset. I began to question, why are these kids so mean to us? I haven't done anything. Why are they saying these nasty things? Why are they calling us these names? The second incident was a little bit more serious. I was in art class, I remember, and I must have been talking out of turn or being distracted, and the teacher's punishment for me was for me to stand on the desk with my hands on my head. And there was one boy in front of me that kept taunting me. He looked back and he was mocking me and taunting me and saying, Sambo, Sambo. I'm standing with my hands on my head and getting angry. Anyways, class was dismissed, and I made a beeline outside for this boy. And I said to him, what did you call me in classroom? What did you call me? And I took his head and I gently tapped it against the wall. Not really. I sort of smashed his head into the wall. And that was that. But he must have gone to the teacher to complain. The teacher came to me, and she was asking me why I did what I did. Well, I wasn't responding because I knew that in that climate, in that culture, whatever I said would not have had any weight. So I just remained silent, and she could have thought it was defiance, but I figured I'm already in trouble. I'm just not going to make it any worse. And so I didn't say anything, and then she slapped me across my face. And I couldn't understand it. So I said, I'm not going to tell my mom, but I'm going to listen to what she's always said. She had this mantra where she said, don't look right and don't look left, meaning that there's distractions in life. And for us, distractions were the prejudice, the racism, the stereotyping, the indignities that we had to suffer, and keep your eye on the prize. And for her, the prize was for her children an amazing education. So at that moment, I thought, you know what, this is getting me nowhere fighting back like this. So I'm just going to get focused into my studies and do certainly what my parents wanted me to do. So as a child growing up in England, it was almost like it was a very dark time. But what I can say is that my light was found in Mrs. McQuigg, my history teacher in secondary school. And she was an inspiration. She challenged me. She inspired me to always be my very best self. And she was really old school, very strict, very exacting, very demanding. I can even hear her say right now, if I was not performing to my best, she said, do you want me to call your mom? And that was always my wake-up call to get back focused and to get back on track. And I think it's because of her that I decided to become a teacher, because I wanted to be the Mrs. McQuigg in the lives of the children that I am privileged to serve and continue to serve to this day. So we moved to Canada when I was 15, and that was just the worst year of my life because I left all my friends in England. And we settled in Etobicoke, and I went to high school, Vincent Massey Collegiate Institute. And I remember being ridiculed and teased, but it wasn't because of the color of my skin. It was because I had a thick Yorkshire accent. I did not know that at the time. And I remember I'd be asking, pass me the rubber. And then they'd just be rolling on the floor laughing. And of course, I came to realize that in this country, it's eraser, not rubber. So those were the kinds of things. I was teased because of my accent. I know what it's like to be relegated to a certain strata in society. I know what it's like to be looked on as something less than. So I know that as a teacher, when I became a teacher, kids came to my classroom sad. It was my responsibility to make sure that they left happy. If children was struggling with their work and not understanding, I knew it was my responsibility to make sure that they were successful. I had to ensure that the children knew that I cared about them, because I know what it's like to feel that you don't belong somewhere, that no one cares or looks out for you. I think to myself that we all have situations in our lives. We all have things that happen to us, whether good or unjust. And we can either use those situations to empower us, or we can allow them to drive us down. And I think from the age of 12, I decided that I would use all these situations that happened to me to empower me. So when I meet with students, when I meet with parents, I'm always asking them, what do you want to learn from this situation? How do you want your child to be changed from this situation? We always want our children to choose good. We always want our students to choose what is right. But we, as adults, we have to help them. We have to advocate for them. We have to help them make the right decisions. We have to be the voice of the children who have no voice. My name is Margaret Lazarus. I'm Superintendent of Education at the Durham District School Board, and this is my story.
Thank you very much, Margaret. This is indeed your story, and we appreciate you sharing that with us tonight. I think it certainly sets the foundation for the balance of tonight, but also the foundation for why we're here. So appreciate that so much. Thank you. I did fail to mention that we do have regrets from Darlene Forbes tonight. I failed to mention that at the start of the meeting, so just be able to extend her regrets. She is celebrating a very special night tonight with her daughter, and she is in the place that she wants to be, which is just perfect. When you celebrate 16 years, it's an important thing to be with your daughter. So we're going to move on to item number 9, Ministry Memorandums. Director Miller.
Thank you. Recently in the legislature, Bill 124, Protecting a Sustainable Public Sector for Future Generations Act, has reached royal consent, and the 2019 Fall Economic Statement was released. It should be known that it was made public today that EPFO is in a legal strike position effective November 25th. Notice has been served that job action will commence on November 26th with Phase 1. Minister Stephen Leachy today was requesting mediation with EPFO. OSSTF is currently in a legal strike position as well, and currently bargaining is happening, and we'll continue to keep the public, our students and trustees updated regarding what's happening provincially with labor action across the province. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Miller. We'll move to public question period. We have 3 tonight. And for those individuals that are brand new at asking questions to our board, I will ask that you come forward when I call your name to the middle podium, and you certainly have the opportunity to ask your question, or I can read your question, but I know you're quite capable, and then you're certainly allowed to be able to ask a follow-up question as well. So the first question that we have tonight is from Christina Ellis. Pardon? Yeah, right. Yes, and thank you. I know this is a little daunting because it looks like the Supreme Court of the United States, but it's not really that bad. So
That's okay.
So I appreciate that.
That's okay. So I'm Christina Ellis, and I'm here.
Could you just talk into perfect?
I'm here representing CE Broughton for the regular and modified programming. My question is, as you guys know, you're wanting to rid that program, and if you were to take away the year-round calendar, what alternative plan do you have in place for children with special needs that will provide equality and fairness leading to a successful educational pathway?
Thank you very much for that question. You can stay at the front if you'd like, unless if you have a follow-up question, then
Okay,
I'll...
I have plenty of questions.
Yes, okay, so I'm going to let you, but I'm going to ask Superintendent Andrea McCauley to be able to address this first question, if you could.
Thank you, through your chair. Christina, thank you so much for your question. Our commitment truly is to each and every one of our kids and supporting their individual pathways. Our clinical support staff, because kids are supported with school staff, as well as a robust team here at the board. The school year for that staff is based on the regular calendar, and we want to make sure that they're available each and every day of learning for students. So the alignment of the regular calendar for all of our kids allows us to provide those layers of support for each and every one of them.
What is the actual plan you have in place for...
Sorry, Christina, I can't hear.
What would be the actual plan you have in place for children with special needs? I can refer to my son, for example. He cannot go to school every day. And with providing breaks in between long periods of time, he remains focused, he remains disciplined. Because the school is unable to provide one-on-one attention for him all the time, he is able to remain in the classroom. But if he was to go from September to December with no breaks, well, he's going to be disruptive. He's not going to learn. He's not going to remain focused. His sick time is going to go up because he's getting tired. His immune system's going to drop. So there's a big avenue that is, I think, is being missed. So I would like to know what actual plan, if my child was to go into the regular stream program, do you have in place for him to be successful? I see you have many core values listed on the wall here. I believe that if you take away the modified program, you're not going to be addressing his mental health and his well-being. You're not going to be deepening his learning. You are not going to provide equity and diversity for him. So he will struggle and not be a successful student.
No, thank you. We would be meeting with each of the parents of the kids with special education needs through the transition to plan for all of that, taking those considerations in place and mitigating them as much as we can with supports. But really, you're expert on your child, and we'd look forward to meeting with you one-on-one on that.
Perfect. And can we look at a timeline when that's going to be happening?
It would be part of the transition process if the decision is made to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christina. The next question is from John Higo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also a parent of 3 children at C.E. Broughton Public School in the modified calendar program. My question is, what were the original success criteria of the modified calendar year pilot project?
Just to clarify, you're talking about what was originally established?
In 1996, when they established the pilot project for the modified calendar year, what were the success criteria?
Okay, I'm going to turn that over to Christine Natzkeville or Georgette, between the two of you, if you would like to, as a superintendent of Whitby and facilities, if you could answer that question, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Originally, the program was considered a pilot program when it started in 1996. The idea behind the program was to look at year-round schooling with the students in itself. So that was the original idea behind the program. It hasn't evolved or changed through the years, through that time, but that was the original thinking.
Also, the enrollment is a key factor in the viability of the program, but as a reminder, we are still just in that consultation process and gathering all the feedback from the parents to be able to put all of that information into a report for trustees' consideration in January.
And if I could, a follow-up question. Most pilot projects have a success criteria, without which, how do you measure outcomes and how do you determine if the pilot project was indeed a success? Anecdotally, if you talk to parents, if you talk to educators at C.E. Broughton, it is a success, but without measuring the actual data, how do you determine that?
Is there a further comment to that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again. We measure success in various ways in the pilot program, in the same way that we measure for all of our programs, in terms of our report card data for our students, our school climate data, those kinds of things. We also look at enrollment and the trends of the enrollment over time. So those are some of the criteria that we do use and we have used over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Lisa Soletto, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi there, thanks for having me. The modified program to learning as being a good thing was not my idea or the community's idea. It was your idea, the drivers of best and strategic information delivery. This is inherent in the fact that you offered a program as far back as '96 as an alternative to the standard tool of schooling, which of course is hundreds of years old. I think you acted progressively and in the best interest of your student base, for which you are responsible, so kudos to you. This modified program adheres to your strategic plans in terms of equity and diversity by inviting students from outside the school district, Ajax, Pickering, Uxbridge, Whitby, Oshawa, to name a few. You have ensured that there is a high social, economic, and multicultural pluralism within the walls of Broughton, is essentially what Canada is based on. The case of your My Story tonight would be minimized in the face of this multicultural atmosphere within the school. So bravo to the board for its commitment to the people on this scope. The success component of the strategic plan is touched upon. There have been numerous studies outlining the benefits of continuous studies to all students and those with the need for adaptation to learning, which points to your mental health and well-being. Also, there is logic in realizing the benefits to teachers who are keepers of your students. They can teach my children well, and I have trust in them when they catch the breaks they need throughout the year. We all know how tired we get when we raise our own 2 or 3 children.
Sorry,
So,
Lisa, sorry. Do you have a question?
my question to you is, are you willing to turn your back on success? Why are you willing to collapse a model that you yourselves initiated, having the insight and intelligence to bring it to light in the first place? And we all know that it is the female-dominated fields of healthcare, social and community services, and education that gets slapped with cuts from the government first. Why do you not take action, as do the leaders in healthcare and social services, to raise money for yourselves for best education delivery? And here is where you can best tackle the engagement section of your strategic plan. In the meantime, I hope you realize your responsibility to evidence the reason why you left your children for years in a program that you once
Sorry,
thought
Lisa.
progressive and are now dismissing.
Okay, I'm going to let someone respond to the question. Georgette, if I could look to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Your feedback is very important to us. That is why we have a consultation process that we're going through, and I had the opportunity to meet many parents at C. Broughton last week because we are collecting that feedback so that we can correlate all that information through emails, through phone, and in person, so that we can put that together for the Board of Trustees for our January report. What I would like to say in terms of that is that success is very, very important to us, and a part of success, a part of being successful is always looking at our programming, looking at our students, looking at the processes that we have to see if there's any room for improvement, room for growth or movement, and that's what this consultation is about. Our goal is to support our students in any program that we have at DDSB, whether it be a modified program or a regular program.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, programming is based on findings. You can't progress in a modern society or in any arena of any kind of organization. You cannot progress without basing your progression on findings. And I mean, I did a very quick Facebook poll of Durham families, and I had 82 no's and 2 yeses whether or not they knew about the program, whether or not the program existed. As far as I'm concerned, just like the standard program, China should know about the modified program in order to best serve your students that you guys are trustees to. You're trustees not to the community, you're trustees to the children that you're raising. So you need to, to me, I need to see evidence. I want to know where the evidence is that you're basing your programming on the findings of the pilot that you guys initiated 23 years ago. I'm hoping that these children haven't been forgotten. We all know what it looks like when children are forgotten in an alternative school setting, if you catch my meaning. It's important to have findings, and if you haven't done the findings.
Hey, Lisa, sorry, you're rolling from question.
I'm rolling, okay.
Into platform. So if Georgette, do you want to be able to respond to the second question?
I'm not quite sure what the second question was.
Okay, well, I think that there was a couple of questions in there, and certainly, I think I could probably try and help summarize it, Lisa, in the sense that this is a consultative process. There certainly is a proposal put forth, and certainly as your Whitby trustees, they will be involved, as will all trustees, in being able to understand the impact, asking the same questions that you're asking, and I know that there has been engagement up to this point, and that certainly when the report comes forward, your voice and multiple voices are very important to this process, and hence why there is this process going on. So we do appreciate having your voices heard, and we look forward to continued communication, because I know that all of us have received emails, and look forward to continuing to be able to hear from you on this subject.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll next move on to presentations, trustees, and the first one is from Superintendent Andrew McCauley with regards to Grove School.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found beginning on page 26 of tonight's agenda. The purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with information about DDSB programs facilitated through Grove School. Grove School provides safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning spaces for students whose primary need is for care and/or treatment or rehabilitation. Partnering with 12 community partners, Grove School staff promote well-being for students and provide structures to ensure that students can maintain continuity of education, access to curriculum, and academic growth while concurrently engaged in clinical-based programming. Grove welcomes over 550 students annually from across a broad geographic region which extends beyond the Durham region. The students are clients of the individual agencies and are drawn from their individual service areas. The Durham District School Board is proud to be the educational partner for these agencies. Tonight we welcome Principal Patrick Belmonte and Vice Principal Joanne Doherty, who will highlight the partnerships that are the foundation for Grove and the success and educational challenges related to students who have a primary need for intensive clinical programming. Welcome, Pat and Joanne.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees and senior team. Thank you for this opportunity to spotlight Grove School. We are proud of our story and how we ignite learning. Our goal today is to promote the value of education programs in care, treatment, custody, and correctional facilities, commonly referred to as CTCC, that are delivered by Grove School across the Durham region. In past years, this program was referred to as Section 23, reflecting the section in the Education Act that addressed these types of programs. The big idea of our presentation is that CTCC programs are an integrated part of Ontario's public education system. By partnering with 12 community agencies to serve the needs of the province's most vulnerable students, CTCC programs reflect an interdisciplinary service model and take a collective impact approach to promoting child and youth well-being in our communities. Grove originated as a treatment center at the former Whitby Psychiatric Hospital back in 1978. In partnership with Chimo Youth Family Services, an agency that we continue to work with to this day, the center supported students with mental health challenges. The program grew quickly, and in 1983, the treatment center was renamed Grove School after the small cottage where the program initiated. For many years later, Grove School grew in size and significance, and operating out of a small bungalow school building in South Oshawa named Glenholm. When I was assigned the principal of Grove School in January 2018, my primary goals were to ensure a culture of care with high expectations and to position and promote the proud work that takes place at Grove. With the support of the DDSB, Grove School was relocated to a more central location in Oshawa, and for the past year, we have been operating from the second floor of the Durham Alternative Secondary School at 240 Simcoe Street South. Grove School is truly a specialized learning center that meets the diverse needs of students throughout the Durham region. As these students are unable to attend their community schools due to their primary need for care and/or treatment or rehabilitation, we provide support to ensure they can maintain continuity of education, access to curriculum, and academic growth to reach their full potential while receiving support services from one of our partner agencies. Grove School is at the very top of the intervention pyramid, providing intensive education support to children and youth who enter into agreements with and become clients of our partner agencies. Agencies offering CTCC services to students have entered into agreements with the Durham District School Board. CTCC programs are based on a collaborative model for sharing responsibilities between the school board and the CTCC facility. Grove staff and agencies work closely together, aligning the student-client treatment goals with educational goals. Ideally, the goal is for the students in CTCC programs to return to their community school. Grove School consists of 48 classes from kindergarten to grade 12. 16 of our classes are located in 10 Durham Board secondary schools, 12 classes are located in 7 Durham Elementary Board schools, and the remaining 20 classes are located off-site in facilities or other agencies' locations. In lieu of paying a fee for classroom space, the agency enters in kind agreement with the host community school, offering reverse integration of some host school students into Grove classrooms. We have 48 teaching staff, of which 35 are secondary and 13 elementary, 2 administrators, and a full-time guidance department head. Grove runs on a regular calendar for our elementary classes, and for our secondary program, we operate on both a regular and modified calendar. As well, we run a summer school program for Grove students throughout July and August. Our 12 local agency partners specialize in different program types to support students within the Durham region, the most common being mental health and well-being, emotional and behavior challenges, and corrections and rehabilitation. Grove School operates with an annual budget of just under $6 million. The funding covers the cost of staffing and class operations. Grove makes every attempt to access grant money to support our breakfast program, library, and innovative spaces. Most recently, we have accessed an OTIP grant of $5,000 towards our library, $10,000 from the Love of Reading program through Indigo, $1,500 through a community-based learning grant, $16,000 through the ministry's focus on physical activity in secondary schools, to name a few. Grove creates safe, welcoming, inclusive learning spaces. With our desire to make a difference and a deep knowledge of our students, Grove School works towards 2 key results based in differentiation to support all students with a focus on individualized programming. Programming involves valuing and respecting students' social identities and lived realities, addressing and challenging deficit thinking models, diagnostic assessments for learning, appropriate pathways and resources to support all learners, reducing barriers to engagement and success, and always care for children and youth's well-being. Know every student, grow every student is truly reflective of our practice at Grove. Every student at Grove is unique. Both instruction and education plans are tailored to meet the individual needs and abilities of every student. While we maintain the provincial curriculum expectations, we also maintain continuity and standards with regard to treatment-based goals. We are proud of what we do and feel it is important to share our story. We would invite you to visit Grove programs within your respective areas or our Grove Central location, 2nd floor of the DAS building in Oshawa. We now have a video of our story.
Grove School, this is our story. Grove School of the Durham District School Board brings unique perspectives to educating children and youth. At Grove School, the Durham District School Board's Ignite Learning priorities and goals of equity, well-being, engagement, leadership, innovation, and success take on unique meaning. Grove has a long history within the DDSB where its teachers provide education programs for students in kindergarten to grade 12. At Grove School, all children and youth who are unable to attend their regular schools are provided with tailored and personalized learning environments. Interventions and instruction through Grove School help students with the academic and life skills needed to succeed in inclusive classrooms. Grove School serves children and youth who may have primary needs other than education. Without critical supports, they may be the most vulnerable and may be most at risk of not completing elementary or secondary education.
I do this work in order to help meet the needs of the most at-risk students within our system. I believe all students can succeed when the right environment is created.
The Ministry of Education recognizes that maintaining continuity of education during periods of care, treatment, and/or rehabilitation complements and supports well-being objectives and contributes to improved life outcomes. As an integrated part of Ontario's education system, programs of care, treatment, custody, and corrections, otherwise known as CTCC education programs, are offered in most district school boards across Ontario. Grove School of the DDSB is one of the largest, with more than 40 classroom programs across Durham Region. Each year, Grove School, with its local partner agencies and facilities, provides education programs to hundreds of students from district school boards. All Grove classrooms are strengths-based learning environments with individualized instruction and intervention. Like all CTCC programs, teaching and learning is provided through a collaborative model. Treatment or rehabilitation services are given by caring and trusted professionals from local care and/or treatment facilities and community-based agencies associated with various government ministries. The model of service delivery is multidisciplinary and collaborative. Grove School takes a collective impact approach to strengthening learning opportunities for young people for improved quality of life now and maximal independence in the future. Higher quality of life for the children and youth Grove serves benefits students, their families, and all of our communities. Together, we make our communities better.
Helping students who struggle with challenges with health, social skills, and/or education enriches the entire community. I believe that each student has potential and that the community is a better place when each person is built up and strengthened.
I enjoy having the opportunity to help students be successful both inside and outside of the classroom. Working at Grove gives me the chance to make a difference in these students' lives, while also providing them with lifelong skills they can use into adulthood.
Grove School, this is our proud story.
Joanne and Patrick are both leaders provincially as they help deepen the commitment to high-caliber programming for our students who require absolute excellence in inclusive programs. Every child needs a champion, and at Grove, each student has a team championing them in combination between board and agency staff. Thank you for your time this evening, focusing on our students accessing Grove. This concludes our presentation, and the team is pleased to take any trustee questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Trustees, are there any comments or questions? Trustee Edwards?
Grove School does provide a huge service to our students and does provide, along with the agencies that provide it. My question is probably more for the superintendent, but we have seen some cuts to some of our services around certain, and so has some of the other ministries. So I just want to ensure is that have our placements with the agencies for Grove Schools, has the numbers been cut as far as students being serviced?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Currently, that is not, we are at a stable point in funding as of now, and we saw light in the recent OAP, or the Ontario Autism Program recommendations, that one of the recommendations was actually an expansion of CTCC programs, so we await for the outcome of that recommendation.
Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, I applaud you for the work that you do. I love the fact that we have reverse integration because I realize that that's very successful. But I do have a question. You mentioned that we could visit Grove classrooms in our areas. I'm not sure that we are all familiar with the location of those classrooms.
We have a copy, we have created an infographic which outlines all the high schools and elementary school locations, and Joanne will give those out to you now, so you know exactly where our classrooms are.
Thank you. I know where some of them are, and I would be pleased to visit. Thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you for passing that out. Trustee Barnes?
Thank you. I'm just going to be quick. Hi, it's good to see you. These programs are really close to my heart, and I'm glad that we are not experiencing any kind of cuts in there, and I'm glad that we have you at the helm because I know how passionate you were around this program and starting out. So when we come across our most vulnerable kids and that needs a voice and needs a champion, I'm glad that you're there for them. So I just want to thank you both for the job that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again for coming out tonight, and appreciate you sharing your information and your passion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Superintendent Mohammed Hamid with Treaties Recognition Week.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found on page 37 of your package. All of us sitting in the room today and all of us here in Ontario are treaty people. Treaties Recognition Week was introduced in 2016 to honor the importance of treaties to help Ontarians learn more about treaty rights and our treaty relationships. We engage in this learning with our Indigenous elders, knowledge keepers, and community members as essential partners. Tonight we will be highlighting some of the learning that took place across the system during Treaties Recognition Week. The staff and students from Norman G. Powers will be sharing their school-wide approach to the learning. To speak about the work that has been happening to support Treaty Week, please join me in welcoming Erin Elmhurst, Indigenous Education Officer, and the staff from Norman G. Powers, supported by their principal Nazneen Dindar, Rachel Cosford, Sarah Jane Dickens, and Carrie Hanthorne, who will be introducing students from Norman G. Powers as well.
Anin Bozo, Erin Elmhurst and Disnakaz, Oshawa Donjaba. Chimigwech for having us here this evening to share some of the highlights from Treaty Recognition Week. Raising awareness about treaties, treaty relationships, and working with First Nations is part of the Ontario government's treaty strategy, the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, and our DDSB Indigenous Board Action Plan. Treaties Recognition Week initiatives provided an opportunity for DDSB students to further engage in learning about treaties, treaty relationships, Indigenous history, Indigenous contributions, both past and present, and allowed educators to fulfill calls to action 62 and 63. Throughout Treaties Recognition Week across the Durham District School Board, many students learned about the original treaties, the Two-Row Wampum and the Dish with One Spoon, which was actually the original treaty of the territory which we are currently on. Two students from Goodwood Public School are actually going to share their learning with us now. So this is Brody and Winnie.
My name is Brody, and we're going to be talking about treaties and wampum belts. Treaties are promises. This is a two-row wampum belt, used with the Dutch and Haudenosaunee.
This is the Dish with One Spoon, with First Nations promising to share land, hunt, fish, and trap.
It is sad to know that treaties have been broken.
We need everybody to come together and fix this.
The Indigenous Education Department supports educators through knowledge building, coaching, mentoring, and job-embedded practice. Last spring, the Indigenous Education Department offered a 6-week, in-depth treaty education learning program with a small group of educators from across the Durham District School Board with a focus on building capacity and leadership across the district. This group of educators, alongside the Indigenous Education Department, Kinanao Indigenous Employee Network, and the local knowledge keepers have supported ongoing professional development opportunities with a focus on treaty education on an ongoing basis throughout the course of the school year, so that we are ensuring that treaty education doesn't just exist within Treaties Recognition Week. Treaty education is embedded into all professional learning opportunities as we work to ensure treaty education continues year-long. Schools have all received a We Are All Treaty People resource kit and an online database of resources which supports treaty education, deconstruction of the land acknowledgement, Orange Shirt Day, updated curriculum implementation resources, and much more. This database continues to grow and develop as we work to support educators on their personal learning journeys and a path towards reconciliation. One of the teachers involved in this 6-week treaty training program was Rachel Cosford, and Rachel is a teacher from Norman G. Powers Public School. Rachel is also a member of the Kinanao Indigenous Employee Network. She has enthusiastically and passionately brought her learning back to the school and worked alongside her colleagues, Sally Ann Dickens and Carrie Hanthorne, and knowledge keepers, Bobby Henry and Jessica Parks, to lead school-wide Treaty Recognition Week learning. I'll call on the staff and students from Norman G. Powers to share their learning with you now. I'm going to stay here.
Good evening, I'm Rachel Cosford. Last year, I was very fortunate to be given the opportunity to learn more about treaties and wampum belts from our community members, Jessica and Bobby. I learned more specifically about the dish with one spoon wampum belt that I made a replica of. I helped make this wampum belt with the idea that this would be an amazing teaching tool. With this in mind, I gifted the wampum belt to Sally Jane Dickens and Carrie Hanthorne, my colleagues at Norman G. Powers Public School. Then the three of us, including Jessica and Bobby, met for multiple planning sessions to create monthly themes where Indigenous education was infused in our regular teaching practices. The three foundational principles of the Dish with One Spoon wampum belt, which are keep the dish clean, take only what you need, and share with others, can easily be connected to many different subject areas. In preparation for Treaty Week, the five of us then met again to create a plan of what our week would look like at Norman G. Powers. We really wanted it to be student-led, so we asked our Student Leadership Council to share their knowledge of treaties while also incorporating the foundational principles of the wampum belt to every class in our school. We have students here that are behind me to share their experiences with you, but first I wanted to show a little snippet of the video that they created that we showed at our Treaty Week assembly.
So the metaphor for the river flows and the sun shines, I think the meaning is, like, the river kind of represents life. Like, it doesn't, like, you can't really pause life. Like, it just keeps on flowing. So I think the river represents life. And the sun represents, like, good things. Like, your life will be good things will happen in your life. That's what I think.
The difference between a written contract and an oral contract is a written one is like you're writing it and signing it. An oral one is when you're saying that you will do it because it's talking.
Good evening. My name is Madison Moran.
And I'm Lauren Bracetta.
And we are grade 8 students from Norman G. Powers Public School.
For Treaty Week, all of the members of the Student Leadership Council went to classes from kindergarten to grade 8 to talk to them about treaties. Each class was given one word and we explained how that word was connected to treaties.
Lauren and I went to the kindergarten classes to talk to them about how treaties and sharing are alike. We showed them the dish with one spoon wampum belt and had them create drawings about what sharing means to them.
Good evening, I'm Amina Fatima.
And I'm Janica Eva Janekwi.
And I'm Kayla Sumek. We went to the grade 1 and 2 classes and taught them about Treaty Week. Our words were promise and forever. All of them had very good responses.
Then we asked them what promise and forever meant to them. Then we briefly explained what the dish with one spoon wampum belt is and what a treaty is. Treaties were made between two nations and meant to last forever and regarded as the highest law.
We ran around and let them share their ideas with the class. They explained what thought, promise, and forever meant, and then drew it out.
My name is Jalen Smith, and this is Ariana Goff. We are also both grade 8 students at Norman G. Powers.
We visited the grade 3 classrooms and explained to them the connection between the word agreement and treaties.
A treaty is an agreement between two groups of people.
We also took pictures of the students during each classroom presentation, then pulled a few students from each class and recorded their responses of how the word was connected to treaties.
We took these pictures and videos and made a slideshow which we showed at our Treaty Week assembly last Friday.
Hi, I'm Mako in the BC.
I'm Abishan Sivanisi.
And I'm Andy Kalampakat. We visited grade 4 classes last week and told them the difference between stewardship and ownership.
When treaties were made between First Nations people and Europeans, they both had different perspectives about sharing the land.
Europeans believed that the land was to be owned. Unlike the Europeans, the First Nations people believed the land was to be shared and taken care of.
We explained that stewardship meant that we are responsible for taking care of the land, which is also part of our treaty agreement.
A wampum belt is a symbol of a treaty made between First Nations people. We told the grade 4 classes that this wampum belt was the dish with one spoon.
This is a symbol of a treaty made between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people.
The agreement was to share the land and to take care of the land.
We asked the grade 4s if this wampum belt is an example of stewardship or ownership.
We told them that was stewardship because they agreed to share and take care of the land.
After we visited the grade 4 classes, we visited the grade 5 classes.
We told them that treaty agreements were passed down in different ways by First Nations people and Europeans.
We told them that the First Nations peoples passed it down orally. Each new generation learned the meaning of the wampum belt from their elders.
Elders used stories to explain what the wampum belt meant.
Europeans made treaties using a written contract or writing words on paper and signing it.
We talked with the grade 5s about how these two different ways of making a treaty could be a problem, mostly for the Indigenous peoples.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sana Malik.
And I'm Taryn Ng.
A few weeks ago, Taryn and I went to all the grade 6's classes in our school to see if they had any knowledge about Treaty Week.
We were given a word to explain to the grade 6's classes, and the word that was given to us was treaty. We asked them what that meant to them.
We also explained the purpose of treaties, what they are, and why they are so important. We also showed the grade 6's what a physical treaty looked like with the wampum belt.
We also briefly explained what traditional land is and how agreements were made on that land between two different groups of people.
We explained the meaning of traditional lands. Traditional lands are the original land inhabited by Indigenous people before treaties were made on that land. Thank you for this opportunity to share our knowledge about treaties and our experiences during Treaty Week at Norman G. Powers Public School.
Thank you very much. That was amazing. That's just a little snippet of some of the work that was done across the district for Treaties Recognition Week. And that concludes our presentation.
Superintendent Hamid, did you want to add something? I saw your light on there for a moment.
It's tough to follow such a powerful presentation. Thank you very much, but that is our report, and our team is ready to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Lundquist.
I have a question for whoever visited grade 5. It's not a hard question, I don't think. But in grade 3 too, I'm very curious about what happened because there were questions about what is consensus and how do we make agreements. So that was grade 3. And then grade 5 was, is one viewed as more accurate than the other? And you were talking about oral versus written understandings. And what did the kids think in grade 5? What was their sense of that?
Can you say the question again, please?
I could try. You're much better at public speaking than I am, truthfully. So you were asking the kids about agreements that are written or agreements that are oral, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in the right area. And I just wondered what the kids said about it. Because the question on the bottom of the slide said, which one is more accurate or more valid, I guess. So what was the thought? Were oral contracts more important? Were written contracts more important? Or did they not really have any idea? Because I think a lot of adults don't have any idea. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be hard. I really didn't. I was just really curious what the kids thought. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
So like, wait.
Did you tell them what to think, or did they tell you what they thought? Or both?
For both, they understood. We had to tell them that most of them didn't know, like, who did what.
Right.
And for the Europeans, wrote it down, but the First Nations people used wampum belts to make agreements, and then when the Europeans came, they pretty much forced the First Nations into signing a contract they didn't know anything about, and yeah, that's what we taught the kids about.
Cool, thank you. And I'm so sorry, I am so sorry.
Trustee Morton.
To the staff and the students, while you were presenting, I was listening to you, I was watching you, but I was also watching your principal who was standing over here, and obviously she was so proud of the work that you have done, and for very good reason. Thank you.
Thank you again tonight for coming. It's all good to see some of you again and meeting some of you for the first time. And indeed, we thank the principal for being here. I don't know where Nastine went to. She's probably hiding in the back. So thank you very, very much. And appreciate you coming out and sharing your activities at Norman G. Powers. Thank you. We'll next move on to report for the Committee of the Whole in camera. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The board approved the actions of the Committee of the Whole in camera. We discussed appointments, personnel issues, property matters. The Director of Education, Director Miller, will bring forward information regarding the administrative transfers and promotions. Chair Barrett, this is my report.
Thank you. Director Miller.
Thank you. We have recently just gone through a promotion process. That information will be communicated tomorrow and on the website. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll continue, Director Miller, with regards to the next item on our report, or agenda, pardon me, Director's News from the System.
Thank you. Good evening. I am happy to bring good news from across the system, and there has been a lot of great things happening at the DDSB. DDSB trustee for the town of Ajax, Ward 3, Donna Edwards, was in Toronto receiving an award for the 2019 Female Coach of the Year from Special Olympics Ontario. She was secretly nominated to receive this award. It is presented to coaches who demonstrate an overall contribution to Special Olympics Ontario. Recipients display coaching effectiveness, personal development, and have shown excellent leadership for the athletes. Congratulations, Trustee Edwards. Also, the DDSB Communications and Senior Team was honored recently with an award from the Canadian Association of Communicators in Education CASE for the implementation of our Ignite Learning strategy and our branding rollout. Congratulations to staff for their commitment to implementing the Ignite Learning priorities. Congratulations also go out to DDSB's very own Lisa Cole. Lisa is a math and physics teacher who is currently working with the Ministry of Education. She is also one of 14 women who were chosen to be part of the Turning Tables in STEM photo exhibit at Wilfrid Laurier University. We are so proud of Lisa and the work she does to promote science, technology, engineering, and math career options for our students. On October 17th and 18th, the board welcomed 45 educators from Holsworth Center in Texas. The senior team presented to the group on a variety of topics, including equity and inclusive education, leadership development and succession planning, innovation, poverty youth strategy, engagement and well-being, and branding and public relations. On October 18th, Holsworth visited several schools, including Forest View Public School, J. Clark Richardson Collegiate, Viola Desmond Public School, and Pine Ridge Secondary School to leverage DDSB's best practices in leadership development and innovation in teaching. On October 21st, students from 22 DDSB elementary schools gathered at Durham Forest Environmental Education Center to collaborate and share ideas regarding eco programs they can use in their schools. At the Elementary Eco Summit, students were mentored by high school students and learned about creating pollinator gardens, building bee hotels, and why plastics are problematic. In their next steps, students will take what they learned and implement climate action programs in their schools. On October 22nd, our Safe Schools Department, under the leadership of Georgette Davis, organized 120 students and 20 staff from 20 schools across the Durham region to attend the 5th annual Leader in Me Awareness to Action Student Conference. Secondary students from the DDSB, Durham Catholic District School Board, KPR District School Board, and the French School Board, Conseil Scolaire Viamonde, shared ideas about substance awareness initiatives. Students rotated through a variety of sessions that touched on topics from opioids and alcohol to vaping and cannabis, with the end goal being to brainstorm awareness campaigns to be launched in their school. The DDSB hosted its 17th annual Volunteer of Distinction Award ceremony on October 24th at Sinclair Secondary School. The event was organized by Superintendent Heather Monday and her fabulous engagement team. It's a night that allows us to pay special tribute to our amazing volunteers who generously give their time to help support the success and well-being of our students and school communities. Congratulations to all our 2019 Volunteers of Distinction. On October 24th was Dress Purple Day. And once again, the DDSB partnered with Durham Catholic Aid Society, the Durham Catholic District School Board, and Durham Region to raise awareness about child abuse prevention. Superintendent Stephen Nevels provided greetings on behalf of the DDSB, and Meadowcrest Public School students also participated in the student activity that promoted the safety and well-being of our students. On November 4th, interested students and staff across the DDSB were invited to attend the first ever About That Cut hairstyling showcase and conference. At the event hosted at GL Roberts CVI, attendees heard from industry professionals and watched as talented barbers showcase their skills. They also gained valuable knowledge about pursuing careers in hairstyling and barbering and how the Durham Hairstylist Academy can help in achieving that dream. On November 6th, we welcomed grade 9 students to the Education Center for Take Our Kids to Work Day. Throughout the day, students learned about the vast career opportunities within the DDSB and how each department works collaboratively to ignite learning. Students also engaged in informal interviews with DDSB employees to learn about the pathways they have taken to arrive at their current careers. On November 6th, students in grades 4 to 6 from Port Perry High School feeder schools had the chance to meet the fabulous 4 authors of the book series, The Almost Epic Squad. During the day, Port Perry High School hosted an event with attendance from approximately 600 elementary students. In the evening, the Scugog Memorial Library hosted a public event as well. At both events, students were entertained with song and dance by the authors, listened to readings from the books, and even had their books signed. On the evening of November 7th, the DDSB partnered with DBEN, the Durham Black Educators Network, and the Durham College Rise program to host Visions of the Future, the making of. Parents, guardians, and community members came together to connect with DDSB administrators and Durham College representatives as they explored ways to plan for student well-being and academic success. On Wednesday, November 13th, Minister of Education, Stephen Leachy, came to McCaskill's Mills Public School and announced $500,000 of funding for the Child Care Centre. He spent time with Trustee Carolyn Morton, visiting and speaking to our kindergarten students and visiting a grade 7 French class to see how we leverage digital and connect with students in Saskatchewan. Congratulations to Tammy, the Talking About Mental Illness Coalition and Supervised Alternative Learning youth worker Heather Hocko-Gray on receiving the 2019 Jordan James Pickle Achievement Award. This award is presented to organizations who have made a positive impact on mental health in the community. Thanks for doing an amazing job. We truly appreciate all you do, Heather, and the team at Tammy. For the second year in a row, Durham College hosted a conference for grades 7 and 8 girls interested in the skilled trades. The Young Women in Science, Technology, and the Trades Conference hosted guest speakers Anne Makosinski, a young Canadian inventor, and HGTV's Kate Campbell. Students also enjoyed hands-on sessions such as plugging and patching a tire, welding and measuring, and coding a robot, to name just a few. We would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Adonis Botsinas of Fairport Beach Public School, who is succeeding in achieving his goal of playing soccer on the international level. Adonis recently returned from the Danone Nations Cup in Barcelona after representing Canada on the international stage. We would also like to recognize Casey Van Shagen, aka Shags, a Port Perry High School alumnus, on his induction into the Scugog Sports Hall of Fame. Casey is part of the 2019 induction class for his career in hockey, representing the Port Perry Mojacks team. Congratulations, Casey and Adonis. This fall, under the leadership of Superintendent Jamila Maliha, an overdrive app called Sora was made available to students. The app allows teacher librarians to create their own digital library collection and connects with DDSB's digital library. Students can use the app to borrow and read books on their DDSB or personal devices. So far, there have been 17,000 checkouts by more than 4,000 unique users. Our district-wide collection currently consists of more than 8,500 books. Uxbridge Public School student Luba Brown has been selected to serve as a page at the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. She will serve in this role from November 18th to December 12th. And it was actually Luba's twin sister who was selected for the role last year, and now she is following in her footsteps. Great job. You've made us very proud. Officially today, we welcome Nora Marsh, Associate Director for Academic Services to the Durham District School Board, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you join our team. Finally, October 24th was Early Childhood Educators Appreciation Day, and we truly value our ECEs and childcare workers for all their hard work and their dedication to support the success of our early learners. I'd like to recognize and thank Superintendent Jim Markowski and Stacey Lapine-Fisher and her team. We made an excellent video about our ECEs, and we'd like just to show a snippet of you to show our appreciation for all the work they do.
ECEs need to be in kindergarten classrooms, and you could list 1,000 reasons why they need to be here, but the number one reason is their expertise. They went to schooling for this particular age. They bring their knowledge to the table about this particular age group, and they assist us as teachers of what is appropriate, what needs to be put out so that these children can succeed, so they can achieve their highest potential. So they're moving on to grade 1 and their future with a skill set and the things that they need so that they can be successful.
So I think that the importance of an EC in the classroom is the expertise that they bring into the classroom on early childhood development. That helps to plan better for where they are developmentally. In the 2-year kindergarten program, the amount of development that happens within those 2 years is so specific and happens at different times for each student. So having that expertise in the classroom helps us to plan for each child individually as it's needed.
The piece that I think is extremely important is the fact that with 2 educators in the room, the students get so much more out of a program.
We help implement a curriculum that's child-based, play-based, and at their developmental level as each child, and treat each child as an individual, helping them grow and learn at their own pace.
ECEs are able to model pro-social communication, which enables children to be able to interact with their peers in a positive manner.
Oftentimes, students will come into school not ever being away from their parents, and just knowing that they have someone that they can trust and rely on to provide that security for them is important.
I think that the most important thing that we do is we make the kids feel comfortable when they come to school. If they're feeling a little bit nervous, if they're feeling a little bit shy, we're that presence that gives the stability to them and lets them sort of come out their shells a little bit.
To watch the full video, please go to YouTube. That's just a snippet to catch your attention, and I'd like to recognize the great work being done by our early years team. Thank you, trustees. It's been a busy month. That is the report. The dates of significance, as you can see, take us right into to the end of December.
Thank you very much, Director Miller, and appreciate you bringing forward that report. Going to move on to recommended actions, and we'll have a report from the Standing Committee of November the 4th. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. You'll find my report on pages 40 through 48, but I would also bring your attention to a motion on page 40 brought forward by Trustee Ashley Noble, another motion on page 41 brought forward by Trustee Paul Crawford.
Yes, and those 2 motions will be serve as notices and bring forward to the next board meeting as well. So, Trustee Ashley Noble, though, we had talked about being able to bring yours forward here tonight to be able to look for affirmation. So I'd like you to be able to talk to that motion, if you could. Sorry, I'll push the button.
That might help, wouldn't it? I would be happy to talk about it. So I did bring this motion forward as a motion that came out of correspondence towards the Toronto Catholic Board statement on gender equity and gender expression. Since the meeting 2 weeks ago, they have rescinded their entire decision on that, but it is still important that we, as the school board, commit to being allies to our trans community, as it says in our equity statements, and continue to push for this motion to reaffirm our stance as allies to our trans community, our trans staff, and our trans students. That is why I'm asking for the board to move this motion to write a reaffirming statement to commit as allies to the LGBTQ community.
Trustee, we do have the motion that's found on page 40 that was moved by Trustee Ashley Noble. Looking for a seconder to bring this forward. Trustee Templeton. Any further conversation to the motion as presented? All those in favor of that motion, please signify. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Trustee Crawford, we have your motion that is found on page 41.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, I'll turn your button on too. Paul, go ahead.
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have some discussion about this. The purpose is for discussion and also to ultimately bring before the trustees the methods being used to solve the problems so that the trustees can vote on those methods. We also have to keep in mind that we're responsible and have liability for the safety of all students and staff. So this is fairly well put together, and someone edited it for me. Thank you very much. So I put it forward as is to be discussed and amended.
Trustees, we have the motion found on page 41, put forward by Trustee Paul Crawford. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Morton? Discussion to the motion, Trustee Crawford?
Well, I think I've said what the object is, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I'd like to get some input from the other trustees as to what they would like to see in the report, something that they can vote on.
Thank you, Trustee Crawford. Trustee Lundquist?
I'm a little unclear about this motion, and perhaps this is the right time to clarify that. So I appreciate that the heart of the motion is making sure the students in the school board are safe, and that we are responding appropriately to incidents that create safety risks. I think that's what this is, and I support that. I also support having a better understanding of how these situations are managed, and I appreciate that one of the tools that we recently received was a chart that will help us explain it. I think, though, that I'm not clear on certain things, and so it may be if this motion proceeds that I would like information. So whether we're conforming to policies on safety and the handling, that's not a sentence, so I don't know on the handling of what. So I assume it's a handling of incidents, is that right? Okay. I think I'm puzzled because I thought that we were discussing these things already. Maybe not in this forum, but I thought, so maybe someone can help me because I am not clear on what the difference is between what you're asking for, Trustee Crawford, and what is being discussed in the incident ad hoc committee. So maybe you can help me with that so I can understand the motion better so that I can be more clear on where I want to go with that.
Yes. You touched on it. It's the methods being used to solve the problem of violence in the schools. We have never really voted on those methods. We know that they're taking place, but they haven't been in front of the board so that we could examine them and endorse them or change them. Also, our policies are clear on safety and on violence. But if we're not staying with those strict policies, if we're doing things like keeping violence in the classroom, then we need to know that. We need to know that those methods are being used, and possibly it might change our policy. Our policies are strictly say safety is the highest priority and that violence will not be tolerated.
Thank you. That's helpful. I think, though, I would just like to say two things. So I recognize that safety and violence are important issues for the board and for the students in this board. I also recognize we have human rights obligations, and so those have to be assessed on an individualized basis, and general policies are going to be challenging in that regard. That being said, I think policies are a good idea, but I think, I don't know if I'm confused or not, but to me, a policy is appropriately in our purview, but examining methods being used, I'm not sure that is. That sounds operational to me, and I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but I would like some clarity, because I feel like that may be overstepping the role that is defined for us, and if I'm wrong, then I'm happy to retract that, but I have a concern about that.
Thank you. Thank you for your point. You make a great point, Trustee Lundquist. I think we are venturing a little bit into the operational aspect. We did get a Ministry of Education rating that we can share again at our next incident ad hoc meeting, that we were, I believe, exceeding the standards. So they were exceeding the standards in which we were using and the strategies. They are researched and evidence-based with the Safe Schools team. So we're happy to bring those back and to review what we're using. But when we did have the inspection by the ministry, we did exceed the strategies being used for our students. But we have to recognize new students come in all the time, needs change. We have to differentiate for their needs as well.
Trustee Crawford?
Yes, that's close to what I'm getting at, and I'm not saying it's something that needs to be produced tonight. In fact, I think you said at the last meeting we're going to have some information in January. So maybe we could use the questions here and the question being raised tonight to bring forth a recommendation, because what I'd like to have in front of me is something that I can endorse, something that we can put our name on, because we really haven't put our name on any of the methods being used. It's just taken place and it's working, but the Board of Trustees has not endorsed or criticized the methods used.
It's not the role of the Board of Trustees to be able to determine, value, evaluate, or endorse methodologies that take place at a board level. We are a policy setting board, and then it's up to us to be able to endorse those policies, to be able to understand whether or not the policies are being followed. And I think Director Miller is referring to the rating that we received. Then that's certainly within our purview. I think that has been an opportunity to be able to look at and understand the policies on the Incident Ad Hoc Committee, but I don't think that the methodologies, or perhaps Paul or Trustee Crawford, I don't understand your definition of methodology, and perhaps that needs clarification, because to me, a methodology is something very, very different than policy.
I'm sorry, what are we actually doing? What are the mechanics of what we are doing to address this problem? But my main concern is that the trustees, the Board of Trustees, has never endorsed or critiqued anything because we haven't had anything put in front of us. It's a matter, we have the liability, we have the responsibility, we need to put our name on it.
This is my final comment about this. So it seems to me that the only role that is appropriate for us in that is perhaps a review of what policies exist and whether they're effective. So like a progressive discipline policy, for example, whether that's being used and enforced and whatnot. That makes some sense to me. But I want to make an observation which is going to be a little bit unpopular, but I'm okay with that. I'm getting accustomed to such positions, which is I actually understand the underlying sentiment here in some respects. So there is no doubt in my mind that people are concerned about violence in classrooms. I hear that from people, and so I think we have to be better about understanding what is happening in classrooms and how and why. So I understand that from from Trustee Crawford. But I also want to say that there is a role for us in that in some respects, because it does impact our decisions, right? So if we have, for example, and I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to misspeak, but if there are implications of this on classroom staff and on other students, that is something that we're going to have to tackle at some point, because there are policy implications related to that. And so I don't think I support this motion as it is, but I do think that at some point we need to have an open conversation about what is occurring in classrooms and the impact of that on students and on staff and on the board in terms of taking care of students and staff and making sure people are safe. So I don't support this motion, Paul, Trustee Crawford, but I recognize that the underlying sentiment of it is an important one.
Trustee Crawford, would you like to close, please?
I guess it's more important that staff recognize what we're asking for and that they bring it forward in January. And so if it's best to either vote this down or defer it to January, then we can do that. I think the questions here outline what we need, and I think what we're saying outline what we need. And one of the things that we were going to get in our next report was a report on possible liability, possible litigation, possible police actions, injuries
Just to
staff.
clarify, Trustee Crawford, that was what you were asking for. It wasn't necessarily
Yes, it
determined.
was. I was asking for it, but we never got it.
No, at that point, it was deferred, with all due respect, it was deferred to the ad hoc committee.
That's
There
right.
was no support for it at the ad hoc committee to be able to come forward with that report. So I just want to clarify that that's not something that's coming forward in January. I don't want to mislead you that that's not the case, because it was discussed at the ad hoc committee after you raised it, and there was no support for that, based upon the information that we were given from staff at that point about the operational nature of that request. The broader context, which Trustee Lundquist was talking about, has merit, but the specifics were not going to come forward. So I don't want to mislead you.
Well, you wouldn't be misleading me.
Pardon?
You're not misleading me.
Okay. So would you like to close this motion so we can deal with the motion on the table?
Yes, I'd like to either, if it's proper to defer this to the January meeting, we can do that.
Can you defer your own
Yes,
motion? I don't know.
No, yes, I can, but
Well, you
maybe
don't-
someone else would like to, maybe someone else has got something to say about it.
Well, I have gone around the table. I've looked. There's no lights on. I would suggest that debate is complete. So if there's a desire to be able to defer the motion, then someone can put forward that motion. If not, Patrice Barnes. Sorry, wait a minute, Patrice, go ahead.
We have a report coming forward in January, right?
It is a report from the ad hoc committee, the one that comes in November, twice a year in January.
In January. So I would think that some of these questions, Paul, that you're asking, apart from the ones that are outside of our purview and that are operational, will probably be answered in the report coming forward. Because at that point, the report will come forward and then we can discuss that report.
I think they will be answered, but they'll probably be answered better if we defer this to that meeting, because the questions will go with it.
Looking for the will of the trustees. Trustee Barnes, go ahead. Sorry, no, go ahead. Oh, no, you're turning it on, so, okay. Trustees, is there a desire to defer this till January? If so, if someone wants to make a motion? Don't see. Trustee Lundquist?
So I will make that motion to defer, and I'm doing so because I anticipate that it might be withdrawn at that stage if satisfactory information is provided. So I will motion to defer till after the January ad hoc incident. I'm making up words and I know it, so ad hoc incident meeting.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Noble? All I would say is that the ad hoc committee report does not address these issues. It has never addressed these issues. So I'm just want to make sure that I don't want anybody under any illusion about what that report's going to bring forward in the sense of the standard report. And I don't think that we want to tie the staff of hands. We don't want to tie the hand of staff as well. So I want to be sensitive to not only the superintendents, but also the director in that matter as well. But we do, I was going to call the motion. Go ahead, Trustee Lundquist. Sorry, my fingers aren't working today. Go ahead.
So I just want to be clear that I am not asking staff for anything in particular with that motion. I am just deferring because Trustee Crawford has an interest, I think, in doing that, and I don't see the harm in doing it in light of what is going to happen, but I'm certainly not asking that staff be required to do anything further than what they had intended to do.
Yep, and not inferring, just making sure that there was an understanding. So, motion to defer. All those in favor of deferring it? Those opposed? It's carried. It's now deferred. We do have the minutes on that Trustee Morton has brought forward on the standing committee on pages 40 to 48. I need a motion to receive those. Trustee Templeton, Trustee Morton, all those in favor? That's carried. We'll now go to the report of the SEAC committee on September the 19th. Trustee Edwards.
The report for September the 19th SEAC meeting can be found on pages 49 to 65, and that was my part. A motion to receive my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for making that motion. Trustee Edwards, do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Noble, all those in favor? That is carried. We have next Director Lisa Miller on the financial process and 2018-2019 financial report.
Thank you. The report can be found on page 66 through 125. The purpose is to seek approval for the Board of Trustees on the 2018-2019 financial report. Attached as Appendix A is a report that was presented to the Audit Committee on November 7th, 2019, which also includes the 2018-2019 financial statements as audited by KPMG. At our November 7th Audit Committee, the committee moved that the Audit Committee recommend that the board, to the board that the 2018-2019 financial report of the Durham District School Board, including transfers to and from internally restricted funds, be approved as presented. The drafts can be found outlined in Appendix B. The recommendation going forward is that the 2018-2019 financial report of the Durham District School Board, including the transfers to and from internally restricted funds, be approved as presented.
Thank you very much, Director Miller. So the motion is found on page 72 of Appendix A. I am looking for a mover of this motion. Trustee Barnes, a seconder for the motion. Trustee Nikki Lundquist, discussion to the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Director Miller. Next, we're going to move to Superintendent Mohammed Hamid and the creation of a new policy for English language learners.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found on page 126 of your agenda. As trustees recall, a notice of motion was brought forward at the October board meeting regarding the new ESL policy. Today, I present for trustee deliberation and approval the ESL policy. That is my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
trustee Morton. The motion is found on page 127. It is recommended the trustees approve the policy for English language learners. Discussion, or if I could have someone to make that motion, please. Trustee Ashley Noble, trustee Paul Crawford, seconder. Further conversation, discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Superintendent Hamid. Next, we'll move on to page 133, the interim treasurer of the board. Director Miller?
Thank you. It's interesting to bring a report to request this for myself, but we are in circumstances right now where that is needed. The purpose is to provide trustees with an overview of the Education Act requiring the role of a treasurer of the board and seek appointment for an interim treasurer at this time. In the background of Section 170 of the Education Act, you will see the duties of boards and what is required of boards in terms of having a treasurer. As you know, as the Director of Education, I'm also the Secretary of the Board. That has been listed in 3.1 of Section 198 of duties of the Secretary. However, one of the other positions is that of Treasurer of the Board, as outlined in Section 3.2, Section 198, subsection 5 of the Education Act. In this section, the duties of the Treasurer are listed there for you in terms of responsibility. 3.3 also provides additional responsibility as what is required of having a treasurer of the board. So it is recommended that right now, as we are not with a treasurer of the board, and it is required that we do have a treasurer of the board to fulfill the duties as outlined in the Education Act, that the Board of Trustees appoint the Director of Education as interim treasurer of the board, effective, we'll go back to November 1st, so we fulfill the duties until such a time as an appropriate staff member can be hired and appointed as a treasurer.
Thank you, Director Miller, for bringing that forward. Trustees, you have heard the motion as read. Looking for a mover of that motion. Trustee Thatcher, seconder, Trustee Brainy. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Yeah, so you can go home now. Yes. The next is the notice of motion, the review of regulation, daily physical activity by Superintendent Stephen Nettles.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found on pages 136 to 144 of your agenda. Tonight, I'm bringing forward proposed amendments to the daily physical activity regulation. This is following the PPM that came out in 2017. In this report, proposed updates have been made to ensure communication with parents, a shift in language from sustained activity to implementation in blocks of time, as outlined in that PPM, a name change for our safety standards provided from OFIA to OPASI, and an addition of language from PPM 138 with a reference to creating inclusive spaces for physical activity. The recommendation can be found on page 137. Trustees, this serves as our report.
Thank you very much, and it is a notice of motion, so it will be brought back at our January board meeting, so thank you very much. We're going to move on to information items. Flushing and testing for lead. We'll start with Director, no? Okay, please feel free to join us. So it's going to be Carrie, are you going to start to lead us off? And obviously supported by Christine Natzkeville.
Thank you. Good evening. Since 2007, the Durham District School Board has been testing and flushing the drinking water in all of our facilities for lead. This is a requirement under Ontario Regulation 243. In 2017, amendments were made to the Ontario Regulation 243. These changes required school boards to test all water fixtures and taps used for drinking water or to prepare food. The regulation requires school boards to complete this testing by January 2020 for elementary schools and January 2022 for secondary schools. I'm pleased to share that we have completed the required testing of all drinking water fixtures in elementary schools, and secondary schools will be finalized in 2020, well before the 2022 deadline. The testing process involves taking 2 samples from each fixture, a standing water sample, which is water that has been left to stand overnight in the distribution system for a period of 6 hours or more, followed by a flushed water sample. If the sampling results are over the Ontario standard for lead, immediate action is taken and results are communicated with the local health department, school administration, and the Ministry of Environment. Actions can include increasing flushing, replacing or removing the fixture, rendering the tap or fountain inaccessible, or any other measures as directed by the local medical officer of health until the issue is resolved. Since 2017, we've tested 2,840 fixtures. 2% of those fixtures had a result greater than the Ontario standard for lead, and the majority of these samples were standing water samples. Flushing is the responsibility of the custodial staff and is a priority duty as part of their school opening responsibilities. Flushing involves moving the water along the main branches of the distribution system, as well as flushing the individual fixtures that are used for drinking water or food prep. Information for the school community related to our lead testing program is provided on our website. Exceedances are posted along with the corrective action that took place. To summarize, the DDSB is in full compliance with Ontario Reg 243. The mandatory testing allows us to identify exceedances and to take steps for immediate corrective action. We are in regular communication with the Durham Region Health Department to receive direction and guidance on the matter to remain current. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Questions, Trustee Lundquist?
So I have a couple of observations, and I'm not actually clear on who they should go to, but this issue caused a lot of concern in the community, as one could appreciate when a story breaks in the way that it did. And so I actually think that when this kind of, and it may be because I wasn't on the board previously, so maybe other trustees were aware that this was an ongoing issue, but to me that seems something like all trustees should have been made aware that this was an issue, because it was quite a shock when the story broke and people called upset at what they didn't know, and I couldn't provide a single answer because I didn't know. I had no idea whatsoever. Subsequently, though, I did some looking and I did some examination of the regulation, and I was really pleased at the things that had been done. It was gratifying to see that we had gone from so many schools that were a problem to 3. And I think part of the problem that we have is that we don't have a system that proactively communicates things, including this. And so I'm going to just put that out there, because it's not something parents or students in schools should become aware of through a media report. And it's not something that trustees should become aware of through a media report, in my view. And then I would also like to say that Trustee Forbes, who's not here, and I spoke about that, and she wanted to express that same concern, so I want to express that on her behalf. And then finally, the other thing I would say is, I don't think a lot of people understand the real serious consequences of lead contamination and the impacts of that. And so I'm not suggesting that we have a problem in our schools. I understand what we're doing, and I know that it will be taken up by all kinds of people in terms of joint health and safety and children's safety and whatnot, as it should be. But I'm wondering if the school board has considered partnering with Durham Region to actually have an awareness campaign around lead contamination and how to mitigate it and those kinds of things, because I think one of the biggest challenges for us in this regard is that people don't actually know a lot, both of what we're doing and what we haven't done and what we have done and the regulation and all the steps that have been taken. I will say I have looked at our website subsequently, and I was pleased to see those things, but I'm not sure that that's adequate when there's a test that is positive in a school. I feel like that needs to be communicated to the school community in a reasonable way, not to cause concern, not to cause panic, but so that those answers and those questions can be addressed up front, as opposed to making us all scramble. Thank you.
Thank you. Great ideas. As I'm sitting here, I always do a follow-up with our senior team to our board and standing committee items, and I'll work with communications on when we do have breaking news and the departments to get speaking notes out at that time. When we're not having a problem and something hits, you're right, we're not thinking of that. So I'd be pleased to work with our communication teams as we're monitoring the media when there is a national story that's going to bring that, to at least get you an email with a couple bullet points right away, and then we could follow up and with more detailed information. In terms of an awareness campaign, I like the idea. We can talk to the Health and Safety Committee about not just lead in the water, but other things that we're doing, and maybe to showcase what we're doing and taking protective measures. So I'll follow up with staff on that, and I appreciate your recommendations. Great ideas.
Thank you. Mine was around the similar part was communication. I think that once the story broke, that we should have sent something out to parents so they know what we were doing and where they could probably access more information. Because in that format, I'm not thinking to look at the website to figure out what the board is doing. So I think that's an important point as well, is that when something like that breaks that really affects our schools and our students, it's imperative that we send something out to parents, whether to acknowledge it or to let them know what the steps we're taking or have already taken, because then that would have stopped the panic right away, in opposed to the that continued on. So thank you very much.
Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you. I just want to build on what Trustee Lundquist has said about communication, and again, Trustee Barnes. That communication is key. And you tell us that the Durham District School Board website has a list of exceedances. I'm not sure that everyone is able to find it there. So maybe we just need to make it easier for our parents, our communities to see that. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing forward this report. I believe there's been certainly a number of recommendations, which I know the director has made note of, and then we can look forward to continued building on this and to be able to use it as a method of the next item that might or may not be lead contamination, maybe something else that allows us to be able to get out in front. So appreciate that. Thank you, and thank you for staying. So next we'll go to Director Miller, and I think you're staying still with regards to the EDC policy framework. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The report can be found on page 49, and I really do appreciate Christine and Carrie staying late and helping us. I'm going to turn it over to them, but we recently received a ministry memo on November 8th and felt it was very important that we get this information to you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, as indicated by Director Miller, on November 8th, 2019, board staff received the Ministry of Education memorandum outlining education development charges policy framework update. This memo is provided as Appendix A to the report found with the same name on page 149 through page 165 of your agenda. Staff continue to provide updates on education development charges, or EDCs, as the Ministry of Education makes revisions to the education development charge process. A summary of the EDC revisions are provided on page 150 and 151 of the report. Staff will provide future updates as additional information is provided. I would be pleased to answer any questions that trustees may have regarding information provided within this report.
Trustee Edwards.
I don't have a question, but just a comment and just my soapbox in that. Here we are, publicly educated, education funded by the taxpayers, and yet and we have to pay EDCs. The costs are like the EDCs collected are not covering the cost of our land purchases, and yet they are basically exempting private schools from paying, basically getting the EDC, collecting the EDCs. So I have a bit of problem with the particular memo, but it's nothing that I'm glad you kept us up to date, and what not so glad in the direction of the ministry's direction on EDCs.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Any further comments? And I'd only just say in closing, it's really nice that you can use the EDC revenues to support underground parking and pedestrian bridges and things like that, but we don't have enough money to buy land. It's kind of an innocuous gift when this board will be tens of millions of dollars in debt in not being able to afford to buy land. So it's great that we can build a bridge, but I'm not sure where we're building a bridge to. So anyway, any further comments, questions, soapboxes? Trustees, seeing none, we'll now move on to Superintendent Georgette Davis, and thank you again for staying late. Safe Schools Quick Reference Guide, Superintendent Georgette Davis.
Thank you, Chair Barrett, and through you, the report can be found on pages 165 to 178. The purpose of this report is to provide trustees with information about the use and distribution of Safe Schools Quick Reference Guides. The purpose of these quick reference guides is to provide information and key messages to communicate expectations around some key areas related to safe schools. There are 4 quick reference guides on Appendix A from pages 168 to 178. The first guide is entitled Responding to an Emergency Safety Incident, and it will help clarify how DDSB schools respond to an emergency or safety incident. The second guide is around progressive discipline. This guide will help clarify how bias-aware progressive discipline is used when dealing with student behavior that is contrary to the school code of conduct. The third guide is implementing progressive discipline, and it is to help clarify how mitigating other and human right factors are considered when implementing bias-aware progressive discipline. And the last guide is entitled Bullying Prevention and Intervention, and this guide will help clarify how DDSB schools respond to situations involving bullying. This resource has been shared with administrators and trustees for your information, and this report is presented to trustees for information.
Thank you very much for bringing that forward. Trustee Lundquist.
Prize. So I just want to say thank you for these. I know that we had a conversation about them and how important it was to communicate process to people, because that was a lot of misunderstanding, and so I deeply appreciate these. I do have some questions that don't need to be answered today specifically, but I haven't spent a lot of time with these yet, and I would like to, because there's actually a lot buried in 10 short pages that is complicated, I think. So I just have one observation on page 177. So this is in the bullying prevention and intervention piece. And it's in the second paragraph, and it says the intent of conflict. So there's a discussion between the difference between bullying and conflict, and I agree with that definition 100%. But then it says the intent of conflict is to voice disagreement, and the intent of bullying is to harm. And I'm just going to observe that in the world in which I work, that intention isn't what matters, it's the effect. And so I would like somebody to think about the effect as well as the intention, so to see if that fits in there somewhere, because sometimes people don't intend to cause harm, they just do. And that's what personal bullying is, and that's what people are protected from in work in terms of occupational health and safety, but I don't think that the substance is different in terms of children, right? You don't need to cause harm to be causing harm. And so I think that has to be something that we are aware of in considering these things. And then the only other thing I wanted to say that I noted off the bat, which we kind of discussed a little bit already, but I'm wondering if we have, you know what, I'm going to save that question for the meeting that I never remember the name of that had ad hoc incident and other things in it. So I will leave it for there, but I will have questions about this in that context and may need to bring them back here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. So perhaps what we can do is we can certainly just, when we do the agenda, we can add that to the agenda as well to make sure that it's not lost. Okay. Trustee Christine Thatcher.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. Thank you very much, Superintendent Davis. There's so much information here, and it's certainly very helpful for me as a trustee. I guess my question's around communication as well. I'm in the progressive discipline section on page 169, and I was just looking at the words "need to know." And I guess it was with respect to some phone calls that I had around incidents in our schools, some of our secondary schools that we were dealing with, but parents had heard of it through probably Facebook, but didn't hear anything at all until the end of the day. So I guess my question then around communication, do we censor information that parents receive, and when would we contact parents around issues with their kids? And I guess I'm specifically secondary that I'm asking about.
Through you, Chair Barrett, there are certain situations when there is this quick reference you're referring to is the progressive discipline one. So I will just generalize in terms of incidents. When there's an incident that happens, there's an investigation process. If it involves, for example, the police, we have a police protocol, and we need to respect that investigation process. So there are times when we can communicate right away information, and there are times that we need to hold on to that information so that the investigation process can go through. Our goal is to communicate information as soon as possible. So you'll see in certain incidences right away that information is shared, and in certain incidences we need to respect the process and the protocol that the police put in place.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Superintendent Davis. And again, as mentioned, we'll put it on the agenda for the Incident Ad Hoc Committee to have a further discussion on that as well. Next, Superintendents Andrea McCauley and Superintendent Mohammed Hamid with UQAO, supporting our supports for English language learners.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found on page 179 of your agenda. The purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with information related to strategies specific to supporting English language learners and students with special education needs. This augments the report release of EQAO and OSSLT results shared with the Board on October 7th, 2019. Superintendent McCauley and I would like to share that the focus for improving the achievement of our students with exceptionalities, specifically those with learning disabilities and our English language learners, includes individual student planning, supporting educator professional learning, and continuing to foster universal design in classroom programming. Our teams have analyzed the item information reports from the EQAO for students with individual education plans and English language learners to determine strategies specific to addressing their learning needs, deepening our practices for these cohorts of learners. The key expected outcomes of a more responsive ESL department and inclusive student services model with a specific focus to supporting student achievement are strengthened inclusive leadership, improved implementation of the principles of equitable and inclusive classroom instruction, and improved proportional representation of achievement outcomes for students. This report is respectfully submitted for trustee information. We are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions with regards to this report, trustees? Trustee Christine Thatcher.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. I have several questions primarily around the communication and the professional development here. And hopefully I'm understanding. It was a very comprehensive report, lots of great information, but without oversimplifying, you're proposing to target these groups. Students with the exceptionality communication learning disability, those serviced through the ESL coaches, English language learners, English language development students, and those students with autism spectrum disorder. And I realized that there was a chart that showed that some with the exceptionality of ME, so several of those exceptionalities possibly. So the idea then, it seems, is that we're targeting those students with a view to providing hopefully to help admin and teachers get a better understanding of the needs of these students so that we can better program for them. And so the idea then is to improve the EQAO scores. These students, we feel, have the potential to possibly improve in terms of their EQAO scores. And you did mention in the report that inclusive student services would support school teams, but the training was primarily delivered through the online D2L professional learning courses, and I'm assuming that teachers would access those courses in their own time. So I guess my first question is, are we talking primarily about grades 3, 6, and 9? And I'd like to know if we have any kind of data regarding the effectiveness of the online professional learning courses, the D2L courses. Is there teacher feedback or some other data? And would there be any additional professional development planned for the teachers and admin who would be involved in this program? Sorry, I guess I'm a little wordy tonight.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. Some great questions there, and thank you so much for diving into the report. So in terms of our students, and again, really rich data coming from EQAO, we recognize, along with the senior team and Director Miller, these are groups that we can do better for. And developing understanding. So that's where, in collaboration, we're starting with a focus on supporting our administrators as the instructional leads. So part of the reason why we're going through a D2L model is so that the learning can be standardized and we know consistent message will be delivered in all schools. As administrators work through professional development at staff meetings or at BCIs as well, we want to equip them with the tools so that their focus can be on supporting and being in the learning with their teachers rather than on the design of the PD. That's our responsibility as central team, and again, working with innovation to do that as well. You referenced the data point around the students. It's a recognition that our students with learning disabilities are our largest group of learners with special education needs. So when we focus on them and supporting UDL practices for them, we know we will impact all students in classrooms. When we see that we have close to 6,000 students in the Durham District School Board with learning disabilities, it is reasonable that there are students with learning disabilities in every single one of our classrooms. And it is with that intent that we begin with them from an inclusive student services lens. The data that we present does need to be verified through ONSIS, but it also shows that for some of those students, they not only have a learning disability, but a second exceptionality of autism. And we show that placement just to show that students with an LD are actually in every single one of our classrooms and program types as well. But it's around that LD component that we are first approaching, again, because we know that if we move the achievement, these are a group of learners, average to high intelligence, those that have a diagnosis of LD, who should be performing and are not yet performing, and that's a call to action for us. So we begin with them so that we can not only impact this cohort of learners, but all of the students across the system with effective strategies, and again, through support with the director and our senior team, looking at administrator learning first as key learners in the building to support the PD for their teams.
I'm on? I'm on. We have the D2L online courses. They're covered in the BCIs, possibly staff meetings. What about if we're dealing with a small group of teachers and admin, would we include some of the professional development in the EQAO training that happens, or bringing them? I just think that it's really great when teachers can get together and talk. And I think that we've shown that with some of the kindergarten programs as well, bringing the ECEs in. So I just wonder if there would be an opportunity for that, given the fact that we're talking about 3, 6, and 9 classrooms.
Thank you very much for that. And again, it's in collaboration with our curriculum partners that we're looking at those intersects to take advantage of those opportunities, absolutely, to embed it in professional learning. As well too, from my partner in innovation, just a reminder too that D2L gives that flexibility to meet the on-time demands, learning requests for educators, which means that they can revisit materials and support that. So we would see that as whole group, both say in those structures we talked about, staff meetings and BCIs, but it's also too where we can leverage our clinicians in those smaller group. We know that LD starts with that cognitive understanding piece, and that's where our psychological services team will be lead for this initiative and be working on the ground in schools with individual teachers for their individual students as well. So we're trying to take a tiered approach, all, some, few, in terms of pushing that PD model out to support our leaders, but then drilling right down to the classroom level and supporting our educators for their students as well.
Thank you very much. It's a great plan, I think.
Thank you, Trustee Thatcher. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for bringing that forward and for the spirited conversation. Next, the Ontario Autism Program Update number 4. And we're back to you, Superintendent McCauley.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The report can be found beginning on page 191 of tonight's agenda. It is the commitment of the senior team to keep trustees apprised of updates related to the ongoing changes to the Ontario Autism Program. On October 30th, the Autism Advisory Panel submitted a report titled Recommendations for a New Needs-Based Ontario Autism Program, the Ontario Autism Program Advisory Panel Report, to the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, the ministry that is charged with responsibility for the Ontario Autism Program. The ministry, in response, posted the full report of the committee online. Details of the guiding principles used by the committee to form recommendations can be found on page 192 of your agenda package and include requirement for design of a needs-based program, one that uses evidence-based strategies, and one that demonstrates integration with both health and education. The recommendations for the Ministry of Education, Section 3 of the panel report, have been included in your package this evening. An example of recommendation is the dedication of space in all schools for therapy. It is important to note that these spaces currently for school board clinicians and community supports such as occupational therapy and physiotherapy through school-based rehabilitation services are not currently funded, and we see this recommendation as positive for consistency availability. The various ministries are now working through the recommendations of the panel. An implementation team is anticipated to be in place before the end of December, and April 2020 has been set ambitiously for the implementation of the forthcoming redesign of the Ontario Autism Program. Although we wait the announcement of the redesign plan, we are optimistic based on the recommendations of the panel. The intersect between ministries is felt to be essential to the service for children with and youth with complex needs. We are already experiencing a move forward on some of the recommendations for education. For example, the expansion of professional learning, including training for school administrators, is evidenced in the full funding for the Special Education for Administrators AQ course currently available through the Ontario Principals Council, of which Durham is a host site. We saw a recommendation for the increased number of mental health workers, and the ministry has made a public statement for the commitment to fund roles, which are currently temporary, as full-time positions. We also see, following the ratification at a provincial level with our CUPE partners, increased funding through systems priorities for additional educational assistance. We look forward, along with the families in Durham Region, to the release of the redesigned Ontario Autism Program. Our commitment is to continue to keep trustees up to date on both announcements as well as the impact for families local in the Durham region. This report is provided for trustee information.
Thank you very much, Superintendent McCauley. Trustee Edwards.
Just thank you for keeping us up to date, and I do look forward to some of the recommendations from this report that comes forward, but hopefully that as you talk about integration of services around the different ministries, hopefully they will also integrate some of the funding in the other parts of the funding model that has impact on our school board, and that's what I'll be looking for when we get the GSNs. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Trustee Lundquist?
I don't have much more to add to that. I was going to say, show me the money. Like, it's all well and good until we don't have the funds to provide the services that are needed. So I'm happy to see that there's been, I'm losing words again, that they've relented, because clearly this was not going to meet the needs of the students in our system. I am hopeful that we will get something better, but again, there's much to be shown in the funding of such matters.
Thank you for that, and certainly positive as we continue to be able to see that with a little bit of pressure, the pressure has to yield steam, and so therefore there's an opportunity to be able to continue to be able to make change. So yes, so thank you for that. Moving on to the service agreement with the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, Superintendent Mohammed Hamid.
Thank you, and through you, once again, Chair Barrett. The report can be found on page 204 of your package. The purpose of this report is to provide trustees with an overview of the recently updated education service agreement between the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and the Durham District School Board, which is based on the Anishinaabe First Nation Master Education Agreement with the Ontario Ministry of Education. In the DDSB, we currently have 11 elementary students and 7 secondary students who attend DDSB under the service agreement. The goal of this educational service agreement is to set out educational services that support and promote success and physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of Anishinaabe students. The agreement defines protocols for communication, programs of studies, special education, transportation, engagement. The key expected outcomes arising out of this agreement are an ongoing partnership and collaboration with the First Nation and the DDSB to support First Nation student well-being and success, increasing the capacity of the education system to respond to the learning and cultural needs of First Nation students, providing quality programs, services, and resources to help create learning opportunities for First Nation students that support improved academic achievement and identity building. This report is respectfully submitted for trustee information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for this report. Questions? Trustee Morton?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. On page 206, you mentioned the creation of a designated space for self-identified First Nation students in the Port Perry High School. I just want to applaud you for making that decision. That's a safe space, an inclusive space, and I really admire the way the opening ceremony was handled. It was extremely well attended and very highly thought of in the community. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Trustee Morton. Other questions, trustees? Seeing none, thank you for bringing forward that report. We'll now move to Director Miller with the Durham Student Transportation Services Annual Report, or Superintendent Heather Mundy is going to bring it forward.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Barrett. The annual report for 2018-2019 of the Durham Student Transportation Services is provided on pages 208 to 224. Has been a long night. A couple things to highlight. On page 214, there's information on the safety programs that are provided, as well as on page 216, there's also information on process for questions about revisiting bus stops or reconsidering transportation arrangements. That is the report for your information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Morton?
Sorry to be a nag about bus transportation, but you and I both know, along with Michael Bowman, that we have had many, many calls, many, many emails in the last couple of months. Can you tell me how many students are on the bus for more than 60 minutes?
If you look at the last page, 223, it indicates the ride times for students as well as by area. So about 90% of our students are on a bus for less than 30 minutes. There's 10% that are over, and about 1% that are at the highest, around 60, and we know those are unique situations involving where they live and choice of programs.
It used to be that those students resided in Brock. Is that still the case?
For when you're looking, northern is definitely the area where anyone are over 60 minutes because they're traveling to programs outside of their township. The next level also has to do with programs that students are servicing.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, this is 2000 to the end of the school year 2019, so it does not include any of the issues that you've been having since September.
That's right.
So I just want to clarify that.
Similar to Trustee Morton, I was just wondering, for those graphs on 223, does this include time spent waiting at another school? So buses that go to multiple schools, does this include the time that's spent at that other school waiting for those kids?
I will verify that. My understanding is it's time from when the bell ends until they arrive home, but I can verify that for you.
Okay, thank you.
I could verify for you. It does include the wait time as well. Yeah. So, Trustee Lundquist.
I'm really sorry because I just have to say something about busing generally. So I imagine, like other trustees, that we get a lot of calls and emails about busing, and it's hard to make everybody happy, and I appreciate that. But one of the things that has been a consistent concern that has been raised to me is sort of the lack of customer service, essentially, like the way that people are treated when they contact DRTS. And so I would ask that we at some point take a look at that and determine if the process is respectful of the people who pay for the service ultimately.
I could tell you that sitting on the board, that certainly that has been a conversation. Just at our recent board meeting, there were some issues certainly with the phone, but I would say it maybe predates the issue with the phone system. But certainly in September, there was some issues with an upgrade to the phone system here at the board that impacted Durham student transportation. But I would say that it's a broader issue than that. And I can tell you that there was a very spirited conversation with regards to the concept of customer service and request for an action plan on the methodology by which calls are returned, the timeliness, and then also the customer service piece of that conversation. And I'll put it in that context. Yes, so. Further discussion on that? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Superintendent Mundy, for bringing that forward. We do have one more item on other business before I'll go back to correspondence. And Superintendent Tyler West. Well, I may be prophesizing the future, so, but Trustee Tyler West.
Yeah, so as you all have in front of you, a handout was distributed with feedback from the Student Senate consultation on e-learning that took place at the Student Senate meeting on November 4th, 2019. It includes questions brought forth by our student senators around the e-learning mandate for 4 mandatory courses in order to graduate, as well as concerns brought forth by them. I've done my best to categorize it into a few main headings in both the questions and the concerns. And I would like to propose that the chair and director, in cooperation with the student trustees, write a letter to the ministry containing the concerns brought forward by the Student Senate and call on the ministry to reverse the e-learning mandate in light of the student interest.
Thank you for that, Tyler. I know that we've had a number of conversations on this, and I know that in conversations, the director and I had a meeting with MPP Lauren Coe, who we also talked about should likely speak with the student trustees because they were not getting a fulsome dialogue with those individuals that was going to impact the most. But before I commit to anything, I'll go to Trustee Noble because I'm talking and you should be talking.
It's okay. That's okay, Michael. I've gotten used to that. I just want to say, if there is a motion that Trustee Tyler was looking for, I'd be happy to second it.
Not sure we need a motion if we got the nod around the table for a consensus, but the support, so on the motion, so is just, we can certainly make the motion, Trustee Noble, to be able to go forward with that if there's a seconder, because he can't make the motion, unfortunately, under, right, thank you. So all those in favor of the desire for the chair and director to be able to write a letter, and I might add not only to the premier but to the minister and local MPPs as well, and with the concept of being able to establish a meeting between our student trustees and our local MPPs, and particularly 4 that need some education, and be able to go forward. So sorry, go ahead, Trustee Lundquist. I was just adding to.
I just think there's a piece missing, which is in consultation with the student trustee.
Yes, okay. Yes,
So I just want to make sure that that's a piece of it.
Absolutely, because that was what the intent was, for sure. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So all those in favor of that? That is carried. And I do thank you for bringing this forward. It, as usual, by the caliber of our student trustees, it is very, very well done. It is well thought out. And I think that it will certainly, I think, go a long way in being able to ensure that the voice of students are heard, because your voice is not being heard in this discussion. And I know that that was the concern of the 3 of you on being able to bring this forward. You're smiling like a Cheshire cat over there, Sally, so yes. Okay, so thank you for bringing that forward.
I was just going to say, make him write the letter.
Okay, yes. Okay.
He'll do a great job.
He'll do a much better job than I. We do have the correspondence there from the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, naming their potential recommendation. As you know, in the conversation that we had with our council, this is a missing piece with regards to the conversation with regards to the possibility of appointing trustee. Now that the pieces are together, the board can start to begin to look at what the next steps in the process are and be able to follow the will of the board. And we could probably ask for I guess the reinforcement of what the process is from here on in, and looking forward to taking care of that. Likely at the board meeting, I would suggest in January would be the next step. So now that this piece has been fulfilled. Seeing no, and there's the one other from Halton District School Board. Since having no other further business, if I could get a motion to adjourn. Trustee Edwards. Thank you, trustees.
Before 10 o'clock.